Hi, I'm Matt Pierce, and we are back with Camtasia's 24 and 24. We are hitting on the 8 o'clock hour, so we've been here actually 12 hours, so things are going well. I am here with Chris Larson. He's a user experience designer who has worked on Camtasia Studio, and he is going to be here to talk to us about playhead improvements for Camtasia Studio 7. Chris, why don't you take a second and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about
that. Chris Larson, user experience designer for Camtasia Studio. I worked on the 7 release. And I have worked on Relay in the past. I'm an avid homebrewer. I enjoy running and being here today.
Do you homebrew while you run?
I do it right after to offset
okay.
the
gotta have
calories
balance.
that I burned. Yeah,
balance.
There you
Good.
go.
Good deal. So we know 7. If you're familiar with the older versions, it went through a pretty drastic overhaul in terms of the interface, and we'll talk about that later.
Yep. 9.
But one of the things that changed was how the playhead works.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you want to start walking us through what's changed?
Sure. Before we get right into it, and this is not going to be obviously as instructional as all the other ones.
No, that's fine.
I'm just going to explain it, but I know some of the previous screencasts have talked about how our development process, but I just wanted to get back into it real quick just to tell people how we approach the problem. So with Camtasia Studio 7, we focused more on the problems to solve as opposed to just having people, when people write into our feature request list and things of that nature, in the past, we've taken those into account, and we've had people make valid business decisions on what we need to tackle and the popularity of the request and things of that nature. What we've done with Camtasia Studio 7, and we've done it prior to this, but we really focused on it with this release, was taking those requests and our user testing and our feedback from internal and external and the training staff, and really taken a good hard look at it and done root cause analysis on it. So actually finding what the root of the problem was, as opposed to just saying, let's implement this, and that other thing, and then we end up with some Frankenstein monster. We call it Frankendesign, because we're not taking into account all of our users as opposed to just the ones that are vocal minority. So
can I ask, I guess when you get down to kind of the root, what were some of the things that were problems we found users were having with the playhead?
Okay, so with the playhead itself, we had from our more experienced users, now I'll call them kind of converts from other video editors, people that have some experience in the industry, they had a lot of trouble just scrubbing. And that's a pretty common task when it comes to video editing.
And because I don't know what everyone out there is their language. So scrubbing, by scrubbing you mean
just taking the playhead and dragging it along on the timeline and having it update on the preview window update. Now you can do that in Camtasia Studio 6, but what happens is, and I'll zoom in here, and this interface is we'll talk about this at 9, but as you can see, as I scrub along here, well, the preview window is updating, but I also form a selection on the timeline, and that was kind of scary and unexpected for a lot of our users that have just recently started using Camtasia Studio. So that's what I meant by having trouble scrubbing.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
A little unexpected.
So other problems for maybe less experienced users, or?
Yeah. So for some of our less experienced users, we had trouble just understanding what happens when, I guess. So they would scrub because it's kind of a dragging is a common task we see in a lot of aspects of user interfaces. But they drag and they'd scrub, so they do that same thing. But as you can see here, and if you're familiar with some of our editing tools, which I know you are, but you'll see split is disabled. So and it's also ambiguous as to what is going to get split at this point. Is it the last thing that where I left my cursor, or is it at the beginning where I first placed my cursor? So splitting, that was just really unexpected. Why are things disabled? There's no explanation, and that was one of the things that we tried to tackle. One of the problems.
Okay, so we really try to focus on those problems, but I mean, I guess how did we go about getting to what did we come up with as potential solutions?
So a little history. This isn't unique to our product. These problems. We had similar solutions that existed in CS6 and other aspects, and other products we have at TechSmith, like Moray, our usability testing software. We had a similar interface. So what they came up with as a concept, and they didn't implement it fully the way we did, but they had a version of it. It worked well for them. But it was a split playhead. So basically, you could still make a selection because on the timeline, making a selection and cutting is also key to Camtasia Studio's editing. So we still wanted to keep that, but and they use that in Moray as well for creating videos and whatnot. But we wanted to also allow split to happen at the same time and people to be able to scrub independently. So the way we approached it was we took their framework for this split playhead, and if anybody's familiar with 7, which I hope you are, you can kind of see it here. So this is what we called internally, and we can call it here, but we called it the Italian underpants because you can see it's green and then it was white and then red. So it was basically kind of shaped like that, but we won't get into that too much.
It's Superman's
exactly Superman's belt. There we go. So what we did here was, now we have our selection which is attached to our playhead, and with YouTube and online video, a lot of people are familiar with what a playhead is, the thumb that you drag around and it updates the screen. So we wanted to maintain that central point that's going to be what's on my preview window, what's actually being displayed. So we, if you look back at 6, I'll show you this. So if I play here, you can see this little line that forms, and that's actually my playhead. That's what's being shown on the preview at that time, but I cannot manipulate that any longer. So what we try to do is expose that, give users control over that. So that's kind of how we approached it. From a development side, like on our team, how we kind of approached the problem too is what we did was we broke down each problem with the developers. I tried to facilitate the design, and we really tweaked the framework that the Moray folks had put in front of us into what we have now today.
So you're really taking a lot of these different inputs. You got the customer here with their problems. You've got potential design solutions. You got developers who have to implement whatever comes up, and so you're kind of this point person of bringing all these pieces together and then trying to figure out what's gonna, from a UI standpoint, kind of facilitate the solution to the problems, but also meet the needs of kind of these other parties that are involved in the process.
Yeah, it's very much a juggling act. So we try to set everything off in the right direction, and then of course we're going to meet just limitations based on the the development framework we're using. So we can't do that in the time allowed, so we have to come up with a different way of doing it that's also going to meet the needs of our users. And yeah, that's basically what my job is. Yep.
Okay, so with the new one, explain a little bit, because you really hit on the kind of, you've got the thumb, that's the center point, that's your playhead. What about the green and the red? I mean, what do we do with those?
So we didn't want to completely change the editing in Camtasia Studio because, down the line we may, implement things differently. We wanted this to be kind of a step in the right direction for the most part. So we wanted to maintain the editing with the selection, that kind of mental model of how to edit in Camtasia Studio. So we wanted to maintain that. We didn't want to completely alienate all our existing users and have everybody have to relearn the timeline completely. So what we did was we maintained that selection. So you can still make a cut here. Like I can take a cut out of my video. As you can see, I'll show you real quick. Obviously that split is still enabled, and I can make a split with this. And did I answer your question at all?
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. I've used 7 a fair amount, and I think the one benefit for me has been it's been a lot faster. I often found myself trying to mark a point, figuring out what exactly the time was, and then the other point, and then I could split this one. I could split this one, and with this, I don't even have to really think too much about it. I can actually have my selection, listen to it, and say, oh, I actually want maybe more in. I don't want to be at the end points. I just want to be a little bit in the middle.
Right. And going along with that, we didn't want the selection to be the only way you could edit as well. So what we saw from some of our user testing is we had a lot of people that would use the playhead as a bookmark almost when they're editing. And a lot of people have done this with existing video software as well. So what they'll do is they'll scrub along, and I'll say, okay, looks like this selection just closed on my video, right? So I find the spot where the selection closes, and I want to call out there to call out that the selection is now closed. What I couldn't do in Camtasia Studio 6, as you can see here, when I click and drag a call out, the playhead moves along with it. So in Camtasia Studio 7, what we have is you can place the playhead where you wanted it to be, and now you can just drag your call out and it snaps right to the playhead where you wanted it to be. So that was trying to facilitate some of that mental model. People had already developed and assumed that's how it would work, and then they're surprised when it doesn't. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, very cool. Is there anything else you'd want our viewers to know about the playhead? Either what goes into it, the problems we're trying to solve, things that they should know that it can do that maybe aren't like completely obvious.
I'd like to take some questions on the playhead for sure. One more thing that wouldn't necessarily be obvious would be our new audio editing with the selection. So we exposed these envelopes. As you can see, as I mouse over, they turn red. But with the selection, these become a lot more powerful. So let's say over this selection, I want to drop the audio. You can see here, I've some points that are temporarily created, and when I drag down and I release, you can see the audio is instantly dropped to the level in which I wanted it to be. And I'm using that selection, so I don't have to right-click on the line and add points, add audio points and all this. I can actually just use the selection as a really powerful tool to auto-create those points for me and drop my audio. So it's a really powerful tool when it comes to editing audio as well.
Yeah, it seems like that would save a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
Just save you a couple clicks every time you go to do it, but make it really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very good. Well, we'll take questions in a minute for Chris about the playhead and other UI-related things. I want to thank you for coming in at this late hour, and we'll be back with you in just a minute. So thanks for watching.